who uses StorPool and why. So this is it has a customer profile and a bunch of case studies. So the typical customer of StorPool is a hosting company, an MSP or a public cloud operator. They are in this new IT or modern IT world where there is a lot of automation, API connections, integration between systems, orchestration systems, and there are continuous improvements being deployed in these environments. So kind of another term for it would be, it's a DevOps environment, but when you say DevOps, people also understand a lot of other unrelated stuff. Our typical customer has more than 100 terabytes of tier one primary storage or primary data. And more than 100 terabytes, some of our customers are multiple petabytes of data across multiple locations, right? Some of our typical customers have between 1 and tens of locations. So there are customers that have, say, 30 locations across the world, right? They use the KVM hypervisor and they use containers with Kubernetes, right? In addition to our kind of first profile, which is hosting and managed service provider, there are also customers who are sizable private clouds who use StorPool for kind of test and dev environments, or for production software as a service, or for production web and mobile applications and online games or mobile games, right? There are also customers who are not with the KVM hypervisor, but with VMware Hyper-V and servers. So we call these multiple stacks. Some customers have kind of KVM in addition to VMware, right? And in some cases, instead of this modern IT situation, we have StorPool is being purchased as a kind of software SDS upgrade to a legacy IT stack. So they would keep everything else, but they would just change their SAN or all-flash array with a software-defined solution from us, right?
So basically everybody? You covered a lot of ground there. Is there something that's not?
All right. So I would, in terms of split, 85% of our customers are in the first category, right? Mm. The rest are it's not like a clear target for StorPool, but like some companies approach us and they want to get on software-defined storage, and we are one of the solutions they're considering, and they get our solution, right?
Gotcha. Okay, thank you.
We, in terms of kind of product maturity, product development, features in the product, etc., it's a lot deeper in managed service provider hosting in that space. So this use case is a lot more developed. Right.
Obviously, customer profile, like Chris was saying, pretty much everyone, which also begs the question that, apart from some bigger organization that would probably invest into this, if they are like smaller customers, smaller environments, then they essentially take StorPool software and bring your own hardware and, put up a storage together. So inevitably, one of the storage devices will fail. Now, when bigger companies offer that, or the older traditional hardware vendors, they will say, okay, we have this kind of resilience method. It'll get automatically hot spares and all those kind of things. Mm-hmm. What technologies and mechanisms exist within this to be able to cope with hardware failure, and how easy would it be to not shut down the entire storage and then, just have replacements?
Right. So everything in StorPool is online, meaning software upgrades, expanding capacity, shrinking capacity, moving data from one set of drives to another set of drives, rebuilding a drive that has failed. It continues to work if one drive fails. It continues to work if 2 storage nodes out of 5 fail, right? It detects these, faulty hardware not just by I/O error, but by timeout, right? And it throws it out of the cluster. It automatically tests hardware before it inserts it back in the cluster, right? So they're operationally, failures are just, we consider them very common, and there is nothing kind of a failure of a component of the storage system is not an extraordinary situation. It's an everyday situation, right? For example, a drive fails, you get the alarm. In that point in time, you're with decreased redundancy. You have the choice of replacing the drive, and then we put on the new drive the same data that was on the old drive by getting kind of from the other copies across the cluster. Or you have the choice to rebuild in place or rebuild using a virtual spare, which means we would use the spare capacity across the cluster to restore the redundancy to the full, to full redundancy.
So basically what you're saying is that hot replacements and all those kind of things, so traditional things that we are used to in traditional storage arrays, we can use this as well if the underlying hardware supports those kind of technologies, then the software will be able to deal with and rebuild.
Yeah, so you would get your hardware from your server supplier, you would have like next day or next week, it doesn't really matter, kind of replacement for failed hardware components. And these can happen asynchronously from running, from operation of the storage system. So, you have the choice. Either I have a spare drive on the shelf and I can replace it right away, or I don't have the spare drive on the shelf and I want to rebuild using the spare capacity.
And it sounds like in that scenario, you would prefer to have direct raw access to those disks as opposed to some type of hardware or software RAID below the StorPool layer. Is that right?
Yes, correct. In the case of NVMe, as raw as it gets, meaning there is not even a Linux kernel in the path. In the case of SAS and SATA, there would be an HBA or RAID controller, but it would be configured in a kind of JBOD pass-through mode.
You mentioned upgrade from legacy IT. Do you have any tools to support those migrations, or are you just a good platform for those migrations to go onto?
We offer some free tools for migrating VMs from VMware and Zen Server and Hyper-V to KVM, but they're just tools, right? It's not, it's not integrated as part of the solution. And in these scenarios, quite often our customers would simply connect their VMware hypervisors as well as their KVM hypervisors to the same storage system. With this focus on hosting and managed service providers, etc., I want to look at some case studies. So very quickly, Dustin, a large Nordic, really large company, public company. One of the things they do is they have a managed service provider. The MSP is obviously not like 1,800 employees. That's not the MSP arm of Dustin. The MSP is also smaller. And what they did was they acquired many small regional MSPs in the Nordics, and they consolidated all of them in terms of the services they offer and the platform they run these services on a brand new platform. So the MSPs they acquired were on VMware and traditional SaaS, and others were on Hyper-V and traditional storage arrays. And their new technology stack was KVM. They use OpenNebula for orchestration. They use StorPool for storage and kind of a generic white box server for the hardware layer of that. Mellanox switches, Cumulus Linux, right? At a reasonable scale, right? Another one I have is Amito, who are a managed service provider based in the UK. They have 28 data centers worldwide. They came from kind of ZFS, highly available ZFS solutions. In their process, they evaluated a lot of kind of different storage solutions, including storage appliances from, say, HP 3PAR, and they chose StorPool in the end. And at the bottom, you can see what they think of the StorPool solution, right? In their case, they use the KVM hypervisor and a cloud stack for orchestration. And the third one is a UK-based hosting company who's launching a new service. The company is called Crystal. The new service is called Katapult, and Katapult is like an infrastructure as a service solution. So it competes with the likes of DigitalOcean and Google Cloud. They don't want to think they compete with DigitalOcean, right? They have higher aspirations than that. So they call it a virtual infrastructure as a service platform. The reason the kind of name virtual there is that they want to be able to sell this, the platform, to sell that platform as a service to other hosting companies. So if a hosting company wants to launch a infrastructure as a service offering, they can use part of Katapult to do that. That's their plan.